There was something almost sacred about the hum of the Rolls-Royce engine beneath Hazel Mitchell's hands. It wasn't just a machine, not to her. It was a symphony of every late night, every missed birthday party, every time she chose work over rest because she had no one else to rely on. That $1 million Phantom Tempest, with its starry headliner and bespoke interior stitched in obsidian leather, was more than a luxury car. It was the physical embodiment of her freedom, and no one, not her family, not the past, not even fate, could take that from her. Hazel was 34, a senior software engineer at one of Silicon Valley's most competitive firms. By outward appearances, she was polished, composed, and utterly impenetrable. But beneath that surface was a woman forged in years of neglect, quiet dismissals, and emotional deprivation. She grew up in a modest two-story home in a cul-de-sac suburb outside of Portland. Her parents, Kenneth and Gloria, were respectable on paper, a construction contractor and a part-time librarian. But in practice, their parenting philosophy could be summed up in one sentence: Tyler needs it more. Tyler, her older brother by 4 years, was the golden boy. Charming, athletic, infuriatingly mediocre, yet celebrated like a hometown hero. If he forgot his homework, teachers were blamed. If he crashed his second car, a birthday gift, Dad just upgraded him. Meanwhile, Hazel wore shoes with soles so thin she could feel every crack in the sidewalk. Her rewards were lectures about being the smart one, and how that was supposed to be enough. By 16, she was stocking shelves at a local grocery store after school, using her paychecks to buy her own textbooks. She aced every exam, not because someone tutored her or encouraged her, but because she had no safety net. No one was going to catch her if she fell. She still remembered the moment she saw the Phantom Tempest for the first time. It was in a sleek, backlit dealership showroom during a business trip to London. The sales rep hadn't even approached her. Dressed in her usual travel uniform, dark jeans, blazer, and a tightly pulled bun, she didn't exactly scream, "Millionaire client." But Hazel lingered. Her fingertips brushed the door handle of the car like she was touching something sacred. "Only 20 of these exist in the world," the rep eventually said. "Each one a constellation. Each one a signature of time." That line stuck with her. A signature of time. Over the next 3 years, she thought about that car every time she passed on a vacation, every time she said no to luxury for the sake of investment. Her peers mocked her, called her frugal, borderline miserly. But Hazel wasn't saving to impress anyone. She was saving to reclaim something. When the day finally came, the transfer of $1.05 million, the delivery to her high-rise garage in San Francisco, she didn't invite anyone. Not even her closest friend Olivia. She didn't need validation. The moment she placed her hands on the steering wheel, feeling the subtle warmth of the leather custom-stitched with her initials, she felt whole in a way she never had before. And then, like clockwork, the calls from her family began. "I heard you bought some car," her mother said over the phone, the disdain barely veiled. "Must be nice," came the passive-aggressive comment from Tyler at Thanksgiving. "Some people struggle to pay their mortgage, and you're out here living like a rap star." Hazel never responded to the jabs. She was used to them. But one memory clung to her, a moment that, despite everything, reminded her of why she kept moving forward. It was a cold December night, 4 years before the car, when Hazel sat on the floor of her first-ever apartment. She had no couch, no TV, just a folding table, a twin mattress, and her laptop perched on 2 stacked milk crates. Outside, the wind howled, and the radiator groaned uselessly. She was coding for a deadline, her fingers numb, her eyes burning. At one point, she broke down crying, not because she was sad, but because she was exhausted, utterly depleted. She remembered thinking, "Is this what winning feels like?" And then, from the corner of her eye, she noticed the small sticky note on her fridge. In her own handwriting, from weeks ago when she was trying to motivate herself. "One day you'll drive away from all of this. Keep going." That night, Hazel closed her laptop, wrapped herself in her only blanket, and whispered a promise to herself. "If I make it, I won't apologize for it. Not to anyone." Back in the present, she thought about that night as she slid into the leather seat of the Phantom Tempest. the cabin sealed shut with a satisfying hush, cocooning her from the chaos of the world. The dashboard lit up with a soft glow, mimicking the stars above. The engine purred to life, not roaring, but whispering, like a secret only she was allowed to hear. People assumed she bought the Rolls-Royce to show off, to flaunt her success. But that car was never about status. It was about stillness. A sanctuary on wheels. A daily reminder that she didn't need to be loud to be powerful. She didn't need applause. She needed peace. And yet, peace never lasted long when her family was involved. Tyler's birthday party invitation arrived just 2 weeks after her last service appointment for the car. It was glossy, gaudy, and suspiciously formal, the kind of thing you send when you want something. She knew that tone well. Her mother followed up with a message. It would mean so much to your brother if you came. He's really hoping to speak with you. Even Dad called, something he hadn't done in years. Hazel, it's a big moment for your brother. It'd be a shame if you weren't there. Hazel wanted to delete the messages, block the numbers. But a part of her, the part that still flinched when someone said family, wanted closure. Olivia said it best during their coffee catch-up that Friday. You know it's a trap, she said, stirring her oat milk latte. You show up in that car, they'll either guilt you, ask for money, or worse, both. Hazel smiled faintly. Then maybe it's time they see who I've become. Saturday came with an eerie calm. She dressed with care, a deep emerald dress, understated jewelry, and low heels. She pulled the Phantom from her parking spot like a queen arriving at a coronation. The car turned heads at every stoplight, and Hazel? She just drove. Steady. Powerful. As she approached the house she once called home, she didn't feel nervous. Not this time. Because this time, she wasn't walking in as their daughter. She was walking in as a woman who had built her life from ashes. A woman who had earned every inch of her luxury, with pain, with sacrifice, and with resilience no one had the right to question. And if they tried to take it, they'd find out just how dangerous it is to corner someone who's already survived the fire. Hazel Mitchell arrived at her parents' home 30 minutes after sunset, the glow of string lights illuminating the front yard like a suburban fairy tale. She parked her Rolls-Royce Phantom Tempest a few houses down, away from the other cars cluttering the driveway, knowing full well it would be a spectacle if she pulled up front. Even here, especially here, her success was treated like something shameful, something to hide unless it could be claimed. The air smelled of grilled meat and overripe roses. Laughter rang from the backyard, familiar voices caught in a loop of old stories and forced celebration. Hazel smoothed the skirt of her emerald dress and stepped inside, carrying a gift box wrapped in gold foil. A $1,500 limited edition watch for her brother, Tyler, not out of love, but diplomacy. The kind of gift that said, I showed up. I tried. Don't say I didn't. Her mother greeted her at the door, lipstick bright, eyes scanning Hazel's outfit like a barcode. Oh, Hazel, you look so professional, Gloria said, as if it were a backhanded compliment. Hazel smiled politely. Good to see you too, Mom. They're all out back. Tyler's been asking about you. That was unlikely. Tyler rarely asked about anyone unless he needed something. A contact, a favor, or tech support. But Hazel played along, stepping into the home that had shaped her and scarred her in equal measure. As she passed the family photo wall in the hallway, her eyes caught the same old arrangement. Tyler front and center in every frame, football trophies, prom king sash, his wedding, his kids. Hazel's presence was sparse. One blurry kindergarten picture, a graduation photo where she stood off to the side. You had to squint to find her. The backyard was packed. Neighbors, family friends, Tyler's buddies from high school who'd peaked at 17 but were still coasting on that wave. Balloons spelled out Big 4 to 0, and a DJ played throwback hits from a decade no one wanted to remember. Tyler stood near the bar, laughing too loudly, wearing a designer blazer that didn't match his bank account. His wife, Vanessa, hovered nearby with their 2 children, Aiden and Sophia, both restless in party clothes. Hazel! Tyler called when he spotted her. His voice was too loud, his hug too tight, reeking of vodka and ego. Happy birthday, she said, placing the gift on the designated table. Came in that spaceship of yours? He smirked. Heard you finally bought it. The Rolls. She nodded. Yes. Bet that turned some heads. Sometimes. But it wasn't for them. His smile faded for a fraction of a second, replaced by something sharper, envy in disguise. The evening unfolded with the usual small talk, the passive-aggressive comments about Hazel's fancy life and lonely apartment, the tired jokes about Tyler being the family favorite. No one laughed louder than their parents, who somehow still believed these things were harmless. Then, just as dessert was served and Hazel was eyeing the exit, her mother approached, placing a too familiar hand on her shoulder. Sweetheart, could you come inside for a minute? We'd like to talk. Just the family. Hazel froze for half a beat. Sure. She followed her mother into the house, down the hallway, and into the study, a dark-paneled room that smelled of old books and pipe smoke. Her father was already seated behind the desk, his posture stiff, Tyler lounging on the leather sofa like a prince awaiting tribute. Hazel sat on the far chair, the only one without cushions, as always, the least comfortable option saved for her. We wanted to speak with you privately, Kenneth began, hands folded like a man about to pitch a merger. We've been thinking, Gloria added, about how this family could support each other better. You've been very fortunate, Hazel. Fortunate. Hazel repeated, cautious. You've done well, Tyler cut in, suddenly sober. Real well. That car, that Rolls, it's a beast. Gorgeous. Must have cost a fortune. Hazel met his gaze. It did. Which is exactly why we think it could be useful, her father continued, shifting in his chair. To the whole family. There was a long silence, then Gloria said it like a line she'd rehearsed. Tyler is in talks with some investors. Real estate developers. Big opportunity. But appearances matter, sweetie. Presentation. Arriving in a luxury car like yours, it could tip the scales. Hazel blinked. You want my car? Not want, Kenneth said. Think of it as reallocating resources. You don't have kids. You don't commute. It's just sitting there. Meanwhile, Tyler's building something. A legacy, Gloria whispered. Hazel's pulse thudded in her ears. You're asking me to give you a $1 million car? Loan, Tyler said quickly. Just long enough to secure the deal. Once it closes, I'll have the money to buy one myself. It's just a temporary show of strength. You'd still be the owner, technically. Gloria smiled thinly. And it's not like you need it every day. Hazel stood up slowly, her heart pounding in her chest, but her voice cold. No. They blinked as if she hadn't spoken English. No. Kenneth asked. I said no. That car isn't a toy. It's not a prop for Tyler's next failed venture. It's mine. Every cent of it earned. Every mile driven a reminder of the things I survived. I won't hand that over, not to you. Not to anyone. Tyler stood now, face tight. God, you're still the same. Always so damn precious about everything. Hazel turned to him, fire rising. You mean everything I worked for while you were being handed third chances and failing them all? Don't do this, Gloria said, her voice trembling. This family has given you so much. Hazel laughed, not a happy laugh, but the kind that bursts out when disbelief becomes too large to swallow. What exactly did this family give me? She asked. Neglect? Pressure? The constant reminder that Tyler mattered more? I gave myself everything. And now you want to take that too? Kenneth stood now, voice rising. This is about family. Sacrifice. It's one damn car. Hazel's hands were shaking, but her voice stayed level. To you, it's a car. To me, it's the proof that I matter. That I made it. And if you can't respect that, then this conversation is over. She turned to leave, but Tyler's voice followed her. You know, you may have money, Hazel, but you'll always be empty. Alone. That car won't love you back. Hazel didn't stop walking. She didn't look back. But deep inside, something cracked. Not from pain, from clarity. That moment was the tipping point. Not just of the party, or the night, but of her entire life with them. For the first time, Hazel saw it all for what it truly was. They didn't want to share her success. They wanted to claim it, to shape it into a tool for their comfort, their image, their story. Not once had they asked how she felt, what she needed. Not once had they acknowledged what it had cost her to get there. The Rolls-Royce wasn't just a car. It was the line they couldn't cross. And now they knew it. Hazel had always thought that if things ever truly fell apart with her family, it would happen quietly. Maybe a tearful phone call. Maybe a long, unsent letter. But never this. Certainly not in the middle of her brother's 40th birthday party, in a room filled with fairy lights and distant relatives she hadn't seen since high school. Not with 100 people watching. And not like this. The confrontation in the study had ended badly, but not violently, not yet. Hazel had walked out, head high, voice steady. Her refusal was not an act of rebellion. It was a boundary, long overdue. As she made her way back through the hallway, past the family portraits that had always seemed to omit her story, she felt the first real breath of clarity in years. But clarity is fragile in the face of ego. And Tyler's ego, wounded, inflated, and volatile, was about to explode. The music was still playing as Hazel stepped back onto the patio. The lights twinkled. The scent of barbecue and gardenias mingled in the summer air. The laughter, however, had begun to dim. A few guests had noticed the tension. Her father's sharp tone, her mother's pinched expression. Something had shifted. Hazel spotted her purse on a side table near the food station and reached for it, already rehearsing her goodbyes. She was halfway to the gate when Tyler stormed out after her, voice raised, eyes wild. "Hazel!" he shouted. She froze. Every conversation on the lawn ceased. Guests turned, wine glasses paused in midair. Hazel turned slowly, calm on the outside, heart pounding beneath her ribs. "You really just walked away?" Tyler said, his voice thick with fury and something darker, humiliation. "That's it? After everything we said?" Hazel tried to keep her tone even. There was nothing left to say. Tyler laughed, loud and sharp. "Of course not. You never stick around long enough to clean up the messes you make." Hazel stiffened. "You're angry because I didn't give you what you wanted. That's not a mess. That's a boundary." He took a step forward. What? Boundary. I have them now." More guests had gathered, edging closer. Vanessa emerged from the crowd, her eyes already pleading with Tyler. "Ty, not here," she whispered. "Please." But he wasn't listening. "You think you're better than us, don't you?" he shouted. "With your big job and your $1 million toy car. That's all it is. The toy. You bought yourself a trophy while your family drowns." Hazel exhaled slowly. "That car is mine. I earned it. You don't get to make that ugly just because you feel small." His eyes flared. She saw the moment it tipped, that split second where rage overtook reason. She watched, as if outside her body, as he turned to the ice bucket beside the drinks table, reached in, and pulled out a heavy champagne bottle. Someone gasped. "Tyler!" Vanessa screamed. But it was too late. He raised the bottle, stepped forward, and in one sickening moment, brought it down against Hazel's head. The sound was horrific, a brutal crack, like wood splitting, followed by the soft clatter of glass shattering against the patio tiles. Hazel crumpled instantly. A spray of crimson followed her down. For a split second, there was silence. Phineas. Screams. Running footsteps. Someone yelling for an ambulance. Another person retching in the hedges. Hazel lay on her side, blinking slowly, her vision swimming. Blood seeped into her hair, warm and fast. The pain hadn't even registered fully yet, only the pressure, the heat. Her ears rang. Someone knelt beside her. "Hazel, can you hear me?" A woman's voice, Charlotte Peterson, the retired ER nurse from across the street. Hazel tried to speak but only managed a slurred groan. Her hands twitched, then stilled. "I need towels now," Charlotte shouted. "We have a head wound. Don't move her, she's conscious but going into shock." Feet scrambled on pavement. Someone sobbed uncontrollably. Tyler was nowhere in sight. Blood began to pool beneath Hazel's head. She blinked again and caught a flicker of faces above her. Party guests silhouetted against the stars, some recording with phones, others frozen in horror. Then the world began to tilt. Hazel woke up under bright, sterile lights. The hum of machines buzzed at the edge of her awareness. Her head throbbed, wrapped in tight bandages. Her mouth was dry. The antiseptic smell of a hospital room filled her lungs. "Don't move too fast," a calm voice said. Charlotte sat in a chair beside the bed, holding a clipboard. "You're at mercy, General. The ambulance brought you in about an hour ago. You've got a deep laceration and a concussion. They had to stitch you up, 15 in total." Hazel swallowed. "The party? Tyler?" Charlotte nodded grimly. "Everyone saw it. The police arrived right after the paramedics. They arrested him on the spot." Hazel closed her eyes. A hot tear slid down her temple. Charlotte gently squeezed her hand. "You're safe now." Later, a doctor came in, kind-eyed and efficient. "No skull fracture, which is lucky," he said. "But you'll need rest. No screens, no reading, no stress." Hazel almost laughed at that last part. The officers came next, Bennett and Rodriguez. They had already spoken to a dozen guests who'd witnessed the assault. The footage from several phones had already gone viral on local social media pages. "He hit you hard, Ms. Mitchell," Officer Bennett said. "But this case is pretty straightforward. You want to press charges?" Hazel didn't hesitate. "Yes. Assault with a deadly weapon. That's what we're recommending to the DA." "And the others?" Hazel asked quietly. "My parents. They planned this." The officers exchanged a look. "Did they participate in the assault?" Officer Rodriguez asked. "No. But they asked me to give Tyler my car. As if it belonged to them. They manipulated me. And after I said no." She trailed off. "The rest didn't need words." "We'll include that in our report," Rodriguez said. "Financial coercion isn't a criminal offense in the same way, but it builds a strong case for motive and premeditation." When the officers left, Hazel lay in silence, staring at the ceiling. The pain in her head pulsed in time with her heartbeat. But a deeper pain lingered beneath, the kind that couldn't be stitched shut. It wasn't just the bottle. It wasn't just the blood. It was the realization that there had never been a line her family wouldn't cross. Not for Tyler, not for their pride, not for control. Olivia arrived just before sunrise, her eyes bloodshot, her arms full of snacks and clean clothes. "I came as soon as I heard," she whispered, tears brimming. Hazel, groggy but lucid, managed a wry smile. "They did it. They finally broke something they can't fix." Olivia hugged her gently. "They didn't break you. Not really. They just proved what you've always known." Hazel nodded slowly. That car, the Rolls-Royce, would never be the same to her again. Not because it was tainted, but because it had become something more than a trophy. It had become the symbol of her final stand. They hadn't been trying to share her success. They had been trying to steal it. And when she said no, they broke. But Hazel didn't. Even as the stitches pulled and the pain meds dulled her thoughts, she knew one thing with absolute certainty. This was the beginning of the end. Not for her, but for them. The soft hum of the heart monitor was the first thing Hazel heard as she slowly returned to consciousness. Each beep seemed to punctuate a new awareness, of pain, of memory, of loss. Her head throbbed with an ache that felt ancient, as if it had been building not for hours, but for years. She blinked against the fluorescent hospital lights above her, then turned her face toward the window. The blinds were shut, but a sliver of sunrise bled through the edges. A new day already demanding her attention. The hospital room was quiet except for the machines and the distant murmur of nurses at the station down the hall. Hazel stirred, wincing as her hand instinctively reached up toward her scalp. Bandages. The pain was sharp and fresh, a brutal reminder of the champagne bottle, Tyler's rage, the sudden warmth of blood trickling down her temple. But even sharper was the sting of betrayal. She wasn't alone. Olivia sat nearby in a stiff plastic chair, head resting against the wall, a coat draped over her shoulders like a makeshift blanket. Sensing movement, she stirred. "Hazel," she whispered, moving quickly to her side. "Hey, you're awake." Hazel nodded slowly, her throat too dry for words. "I'll get the nurse," Olivia said gently, pressing the call button before returning to hold her friend's hand. You scared the hell out of me. The nurse arrived, checked vitals, and reassured her that the concussion wasn't severe. 15 stitches. No skull fracture. She'd be sore for a while, but she was lucky. Hazel wasn't so sure. As the room cleared again, Olivia sat back down. You were right, Hazel said finally, voice hoarse. It wasn't about the car. Olivia tilted her head. I know. No. I mean, it was never just about the car. I think they planned this. All of it. And as she said the words, more pieces began clicking into place. Fragments of conversations, odd paperwork, passing comments that hadn't meant much in the moment but now returned with sinister clarity. 2 days later, Hazel was released into Olivia's care. Her head was still bandaged, her body weak, but her mind was razor sharp. That afternoon, as she sipped warm broth in Olivia's kitchen, she finally spoke about the truth she had begun to uncover. They forged documents, she said, her voice steadier now. I remember, a few months ago, my dad asked me to sign something for refinancing. I didn't even read it. He made it sound so urgent. Like they'd lose the house if I didn't sign. Now I think, they added me to the title. Probably to use my credit. Olivia looked stunned. Wait, they put your name on the house? Hazel nodded. And I think they've been using my name in other ways. I found an email a while ago, a confirmation for a new business registration. I thought it was spam at the time. But the address listed was mine. My condo. Are you saying they started a fake company? Hazel exhaled slowly. Mitchell Solutions LLC. Tyler listed as CEO. Filed under my address. She paused. I also got a notice from my insurance agent last month. They said someone had requested to add another driver to my auto policy. I didn't think much of it. I declined the request. But now, I think it was Tyler. The silence between them thickened. They weren't just trying to borrow the car, Hazel said. They were preparing to take it. Legally. Slowly. Like it belonged to them all along. Later that evening, Olivia contacted her cousin Rebecca, a sharp-tongued family law attorney who agreed to stop by the next day. Rebecca arrived with a briefcase, no-nonsense heels, and an immediate sense of control. After listening to Hazel's account, she spoke bluntly. This isn't just emotional manipulation. This is premeditated financial abuse, possibly even fraud, depending on what they filed. If they created a company using your name and address without your consent, that's identity misuse. If they tried to insure a vehicle in your name without permission, that's insurance fraud. And if they added your name to a property deed without explaining the implications, especially for financial leverage, we might even be looking at civil conspiracy. Hazel's head swam. I thought, maybe they just got desperate. But this was orchestrated. Rebecca nodded. You weren't just their daughter or sister. You were a resource. A tool to access better credit, secure more investments, and borrow legitimacy. Hazel remembered a moment from years ago, her mother helping her fill out scholarship forms on the kitchen table. I don't understand half of this, Gloria had said with a forced smile. But you'll figure it out. You always do. Hazel had beamed at the praise then, unaware it was the start of a pattern. Her intelligence wasn't nurtured. It was harvested. Her independence was never admired, just banked on. And now, they'd taken it further than she ever imagined. That night, Hazel stood alone in Olivia's guest room, staring at her reflection in the mirror. The bandage on her head looked smaller now, but it still marked her, a physical echo of the damage done. But even deeper than the wound was the clarity. She wasn't crazy. She wasn't overreacting. She had been targeted, used. When Tyler swung that bottle, it wasn't a sudden outburst. It was the culmination of a long-held belief: Hazel belongs to us. Her success is ours to claim. Her no means nothing. The car had simply been the final symbol. The thing too visible, too bold, too unreachable. They couldn't steal her degree, her job title, her quiet nights alone. But the Rolls-Royce? That was something they could wrap their hands around. Something they could drive. But Hazel had said no. And for the first time, she had meant it. Rebecca's research in the following days only confirmed her suspicions. Tyler had listed Hazel's condo address on 3 separate applications. One for a business loan, one for insurance, and one for a line of credit. Gloria had co-signed on 2 of them. Kenneth had submitted paperwork using Hazel's electronic signature, a forgery. Mitchell Solutions LLC was real on paper, but hollow in practice. No products, no employees, no income. Just a front. And Hazel's name was nowhere on it. Just her address. Just her reputation. Why? She whispered to herself late one night. But she already knew the answer. Because they thought she'd never push back. Because she'd always been quiet. Reliable. The one who filled the gap when Tyler failed. The one who never said no. Until now. A week after the attack, Hazel visited the garage where her Rolls-Royce was stored. She hadn't seen it since the night of the party. The chrome gleamed beneath the soft lighting. The custom starry interior was untouched, the car exactly as she left it. She sat behind the wheel, hands resting on the leather. Not to drive, not yet, but just to feel. And for the first time, she didn't feel shame about what it represented. Not arrogance. Not selfishness. But survival. This car was her monument. Every mile in it was proof she had made it, not because of them, but in spite of them. And now, finally, she understood the truth. They hadn't betrayed her for the first time. They had simply escalated. And she was done pretending not to see it. Hazel sat at Olivia's kitchen table, fingers curled around a warm mug of tea she couldn't seem to finish. The sunlight streamed in through the window, illuminating the stack of paperwork Rebecca had just laid out. Legal documents, property records, financial filings, all of it evidence. Rebecca Wilson, ever precise in her pinstripe suit and minimalist gold jewelry, flipped through the pages with the practiced elegance of someone who had dismantled 100 family facades before this. But even she looked surprised as she landed on one particular form. "You're listed here," she said, tapping the deed with a painted fingernail. "Not as an emergency contact. Not as a guarantor. As a co-owner." Hazel blinked. "That's impossible." "Is it?" Rebecca raised an eyebrow. "Do you remember signing anything for them a few years back?" Hazel's stomach tightened. 5 years ago, she'd gotten a call from her father, urgent, panicked, rushed. He claimed the bank needed a co-signer to approve their refinancing application. Something about a short deadline, credit checks, and how she had such a good record that it would only take a second. She had been in the middle of a product launch at the time, juggling 12-hour days and sleepless nights. She hadn't read the packet. She'd signed and sent it in blind trust. "They told me it was just to help with the loan," Hazel said slowly, almost to herself. "That it wouldn't affect anything." Rebecca didn't respond right away. Instead, she pulled out her iPad and navigated to the county property records website. A few clicks later, Hazel saw it with her own eyes. Owner: Kenneth Mitchell, Gloria Mitchell, Hazel Mitchell. It felt surreal, like learning you'd been living in a shadow version of your life. "I didn't even know I owned part of their house," Hazel whispered. "They counted on that," Rebecca replied. "People who commit financial fraud rarely expect the victim to check behind them, especially when that victim is a family member." Hazel shook her head in disbelief. "But why go to all that trouble?" Marcus Johnson, the forensic accountant seated beside Rebecca, finally spoke. He had been silent until now, scanning printed spreadsheets and highlighting suspicious transactions. Because they needed collateral. Tyler's businesses had failed. Your parents had taken out multiple lines of credit already. Their home equity was tapped out. Your name and your income opened doors they couldn't access on their own. Hazel's hands curled into fists. "So they used me, without asking." Marcus nodded. "And not just for the refinancing. They forged additional documents in your name, including a second equity loan and the filing address for Mitchell Solutions LLC. That's the shell company?" "Correct. And the address on the registration form is your condo. The same condo Tyler tried to claim was better suited for his children." Hazel looked up from the papers. "They were setting me up. Not just emotionally, financially, legally. They were building a paper trail that led straight to me." Rebecca leaned forward, her voice firmer now. "Which is why we're here. What they did wasn't just manipulative. It was criminal, forgery, fraud, identity misuse. And now, because your name is on that house, you have the legal right to file a petition action." Hazel furrowed her brow. What? "It's a court-ordered property sale between co-owners. If one party wants to sell and the others refuse, you can force the sale. Given the mountain of evidence we've collected, the financial fraud, the forged documents, the assault, we can build a compelling case." Hazel's mind reeled. Her childhood home, the place where she learned to tie her shoes, where she cried in silence through the nights of favoritism, where she signed her first college acceptance letter while her parents congratulated Tyler on a C+ report card, could be sold. Because she owned part of it. "They would never see it coming," she murmured. "No," Rebecca said. "They wouldn't." That night, Hazel lay awake in Olivia's guest room, the ceiling fan spinning above her like the ticking hand of a clock she had finally learned to read. For so long, she had lived on the defensive, enduring, surviving, explaining herself into exhaustion. She thought setting boundaries was enough. She thought leaving was enough. But now she realized, survival wasn't the same as justice. She remembered being 16 and sitting at that same kitchen table where her name was now scrawled across fraudulent documents. She had just won a statewide coding competition. Her name had been in the local paper. She had walked into the house, beaming, holding the newspaper in one hand and her certificate in the other. Tyler had crashed his second car that same week. Her parents had bought him a brand new one, a model better than the first. They hadn't asked about the competition. Not once. That had been her first lesson in what it meant to be the invisible overachiever. And now, at 34, she was done with it. She would stop being invisible. The next morning, Hazel met with Rebecca at her office to sign the preliminary documents for the court petition. The words on the page looked cold, formal, almost too detached for the emotional weight they carried. Petitioner, Hazel Mitchell. Action, partition by sale. Property, 247 Oakwood Drive. Her pen hovered for only a moment before she signed. "I want to move forward," Hazel said. "Whatever it takes." Rebecca gave a firm nod. "We'll file this week. Given the violence, the fraud, and your hospitalization, we can expedite. You'll have a court date within 30 days. Hazel stood, and for the first time in days, felt taller than the weight she carried. "I'm not doing this out of revenge," she said quietly. "I'm doing this because I need to be free." Rebecca smiled. And freedom starts with calling something by its real name. Later that afternoon, Hazel visited her condo. She hadn't returned since the assault. The building concierge greeted her with concern, offering a gentle nod and a box of mail that had piled up. Inside her unit, everything was exactly as she left it, the minimalist decor, the clean counters, the scent of fresh linen. Her Rolls-Royce sat safely in the private garage below, untouched. She stood in her living room and looked out at the city skyline through the floor-to-ceiling windows. The same view she had stared at 100 times before, but now it looked different. It wasn't just a reward. It was a stronghold. Hazel took out her phone and dialed Marcus. "I want to do something," she said. "When the house sells." "Go on." "I want to set up college funds for my niece and nephew, Aiden and Sophia. Not in Tyler's name. Just for them." Quietly. There was a pause. Then Marcus responded, "I'll make sure it's done right." Hazel hung up and took a deep breath. Her family had tried to trap her in the house of her childhood, emotionally, legally, and financially. But now, with the truth in hand and the law on her side, she was building something else. A future. On her own terms. The courtroom was colder than Hazel had imagined. Not in temperature, but in atmosphere. A sterile tension hung in the air, amplified by the hush of whispered conversations and the shuffling of paperwork. Hazel sat at the long wooden table beside Rebecca, her attorney, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Across the aisle sat her parents. Her mother wore a navy blue suit that Hazel hadn't seen since Tyler's wedding, her lips drawn into a thin, practiced line. Her father avoided looking in Hazel's direction. And then there was Tyler, bruised pride still clinging to him like an invisible scar. He didn't wear the smug grin she had grown so used to. That was gone now, replaced by something hollow. But Hazel didn't mistake it for remorse. She didn't come here for an apology. She came for justice. When Hazel first filed the police report from her hospital bed, the detective had nodded solemnly and said, "We'll pursue this fully." Still, a part of her had expected it to be brushed aside. Too complicated, too family, too easy to let slide. But the physical evidence, the shattered bottle, the medical report, the eyewitnesses, was irrefutable. The assault charge moved forward. And with Rebecca's guidance, Hazel filed the partition action to force the sale of her parents' house. It wasn't a decision she made lightly. That home had been the backdrop of her life. Christmas mornings by the fireplace, birthdays in the backyard, the night she cried alone in her room when she learned they'd emptied her college fund to pay off one of Tyler's failed ventures. That house had always symbolized home to everyone else in her family. To Hazel, it had been a fortress of favoritism, and she was tired of pretending it ever belonged to her. Now, she was reclaiming it, not out of revenge, but resolution. When Hazel had served the legal documents to her parents' house, her father had yelled, her mother had wept, and Tyler had threatened. None of it moved her. What surprised her, however, was the reaction of the community. The next morning, Hazel opened her inbox to find an email from Charlotte Peterson, the neighbor who had treated her head wound at the party. Subject: I stand with you. The message was simple: we saw it. You did nothing wrong. If you need a statement, I'm happy to provide one. They crossed a line. Then came the others. A retired teacher from Hazel's elementary school. A former coworker of her father's who lived 2 blocks away. Even Tyler's old friend, Mike, who had been at the party. All offering to speak up. All acknowledging what Hazel had always known but no one ever said aloud. This family didn't protect her. They used her. The day of the hearing, Hazel wore a black dress, elegant, understated. She didn't need armor. She was the storm now. The judge, a woman in her 60s with steel-gray hair and a no-nonsense tone, called the courtroom to order. Hazel's case was one of the first on the docket. Rebecca stood and presented the timeline. The forged documents. The shell company registered under Hazel's address. The use of her credit history to refinance a house without her full understanding. And finally, the assault. Tyler's lawyer tried to argue emotional stress, claiming Hazel had provoked her brother by withholding support. But the judge's expression didn't change. This is not a matter of family disagreement, the judge said, her voice echoing off the chamber walls. This is financial manipulation compounded by physical violence. She turned to Hazel. Miss Mitchell, do you still wish to proceed with the petition for property sale? Hazel stood, voice steady. Yes, Your Honor. It's time. The ruling was swift, petition granted. 247 Oakwood Drive was to be sold. Proceeds divided according to legal ownership. After court, Hazel stood on the steps of the courthouse, the sun warming her face. She felt, not triumphant, exactly, but clear. Rebecca joined her, folder in hand. You did good in there. I didn't shake, Hazel said, a little surprised. No, but they did. She turned to Rebecca. What happens next? We'll finalize the sale. I've already spoken to a realtor. There's strong interest in the property. As for the criminal case, Tyler's lawyer will likely try to negotiate a plea. But he's looking at felony assault. Probation if he's lucky. Jail if the DA's feeling firm. Hazel exhaled. Good. They stood in silence for a moment. Then Rebecca added, you could still drop the charges, you know. The judge made that clear. Hazel looked away. Across the street, she saw a father helping his young daughter into the back seat of a minivan. For a moment, she thought of Aiden and Sophia. Her niece and nephew. Innocent, right? Burdened by their parents' legacy. No, she said finally. If I drop the charges, it tells them I'm still afraid to stand alone. I'm not. That evening, Hazel sat in her Rolls-Royce parked on a hill overlooking the bay. Below, the city shimmered in gold and navy, the water catching reflections like scattered stars. She thought of her childhood again, not with sadness, but with detachment. The way someone might watch an old movie and realize they've outgrown the ending. She remembered being 10 years old, standing on that cracked driveway, watching Tyler ride off on his brand new BMX bike. Their parents had told her they couldn't afford to. Her birthday came and went with a slice of cake and secondhand books. But that night she had stood by the window and whispered to herself, "One day, I'll buy myself 1,000 bikes. And I won't share a single one unless I want to." The car was never just a car. It was a promise kept. Over the next few weeks, the news of the court ruling spread. Hazel didn't post about it. She didn't gloat. But word traveled. One afternoon, she ran into Mrs. Langford, a retired widow who lived 3 houses down from her childhood home. "I always knew you were the strong one," the older woman said, handing Hazel a bag of homemade muffins. "Took guts to do what you did." Hazel smiled softly. "It took time." Mrs. Langford touched her arm gently. "Time well spent, dear. You gave a lot to that family. No shame in taking back your name." The house was listed 2 weeks later. Hazel chose the agent herself, a young woman named Diana, raised by a single mother, the first in her family to own a home. Diana treated Hazel not as a client, but as a survivor reclaiming space. The offers came quickly. Developers, young couples, cash buyers. Hazel picked the one who didn't just see the house as a structure, but asked about the neighborhood, the trees, the garden Hazel's mother had once tended with pride. "This isn't revenge," Hazel said to Diana as they finalized the papers. "It's release." Diana nodded. "And what will you do next?" Hazel smiled. "Build something better." The street looked smaller now. Hazel hadn't driven down Oakwood Drive in over a year, but everything remained exactly as she remembered. The flower beds trimmed too perfectly, the American flags flapping in predictable harmony, the smell of fresh mulch and old stories. The illusion of suburban peace. But beneath the manicured lawns lay the roots of a rot she had spent years trying to outgrow. This time, she hadn't come as the awkward daughter in borrowed clothes, desperate for approval. She came as a woman armed with truth, the law, and something far more powerful, clarity. The convoy rolled up quietly, her silver Rolls-Royce Phantom Tempest gliding into view first, followed by a black sheriff's cruiser and Rebecca's navy BMW. At the curb, a moving truck idled with 2 workers leaning on the ramp, glancing nervously toward the house. Hazel cut the engine. The hum stilled. She breathed in. "Are you ready for this?" Rebecca asked from the passenger seat, her voice even. Hazel didn't answer immediately. Her hand rested on the leather-wrapped steering wheel. 4 years, this car had been her escape, a moving sanctuary, a silent witness to every sleepless night and victorious moment. But now it was something more. This wasn't an escape anymore. It was a return. "I'm ready," she said. They stepped out of the vehicle together. The click of her heels on the pavement was sharp, deliberate. Hazel wore black, tailored slacks, a blouse with a soft neckline, minimal jewelry. Power without arrogance. Calm without compromise. At the front door, Officer Martinez, a middle-aged woman with firm eyes and a folded eviction notice in her hand, rang the bell. The melody still played the same as it had for 30 years. After a beat, the door creaked open. Her father stood there. The same khaki slacks. The same polo shirt. But he looked smaller now, as though something in him had caved in. "Hazel," he muttered. "What is this?" "This," Officer Martinez said, stepping forward, "is an official court-ordered eviction. You have 48 hours to vacate this property. The house has been legally sold through a court-approved partition. This is no longer solely your residence." Her mother appeared in the hallway, still in her robe despite the late morning hour. Her eyes widened when she saw Rebecca, then the officer, and finally Hazel, standing steady, unshaken. "You can't be serious," Gloria gasped. "You're our daughter." Hazel stepped forward, meeting her gaze. "And for 34 years, that meant nothing when it mattered. You crossed every line. Now I'm drawing one." From behind them, a voice cut through the air like a blade. "This is *T. Tyler." He stepped into view from the living room, shirt wrinkled, eyes bloodshot. "This is our home. She's just mad because I wouldn't apologize." Rebecca calmly handed him a copy of the court documents. "This isn't about your apology. This is about forgery, identity theft, and felony assault. I already said I was sorry, he snapped. What more do you want from me? Hazel looked him dead in the eye. I wanted my family to treat me like a human being. I wanted to be respected, not used. But since you couldn't do that, I'm here to make sure you face consequences. By now, curious faces peeked through blinds and over hedges. Charlotte Peterson was on her porch, arms folded. Two neighbors Hazel hadn't seen since childhood leaned against their mailboxes. Gloria glanced outside and whispered, "Please, Hazel, don't do this here. We can work this out privately." "No," Hazel said, loud enough for the gathering neighbors to hear. "We are not hiding anymore." And then, her voice steady and unshaken, she told the truth. "In case anyone's wondering why this is happening, it's because my family tried to steal from me. They forged documents to use my name and credit. They registered a fake company at my address. They planned to take my car, a $1 million Rolls-Royce that I worked for over a decade to earn, and hand it to Tyler as if it were theirs to give. When I said no, Tyler smashed a champagne bottle over my head. In front of 100 witnesses. Gasps rippled. Someone muttered, "I knew something wasn't right." "My head required 15 stitches, Hazel continued. "I pressed charges. I filed suit. And now, I'm legally entitled to force this sale." Tyler stepped forward like he might explode again, but Officer Martinez raised a hand. "Mr. Mitchell, you're still under active restraining order conditions. Do not take another step." Hazel looked at her parents, who were frozen in place. "You didn't protect me. You didn't support me. You used me. And now you have 48 hours to find somewhere else to go." Gloria's eyes filled with tears. "You're really turning your back on us?" "No," Hazel said softly. "I'm turning toward myself. Finally." 48 hours later, the house was empty. The movers packed what was left into a rental truck. Hazel never entered. She didn't need to. That chapter had closed. The proceeds from the sale were wired to her account. Rebecca asked what she wanted to do with her share. Hazel answered without hesitation. "I want to set up 2 trust funds. One for Aiden. One for Sophia. They shouldn't suffer for their parents' mistakes." Rebecca nodded. "And the rest?" Hazel smiled faintly. "It's time to build something of my own. Real roots." Weeks passed. The legal case against Tyler progressed, slowly but definitively. Community support remained strong. Hazel received quiet emails from old friends, distant cousins, even teachers she hadn't seen since high school. "You did what I never could," one message read. "You said no. You stood up." One crisp fall morning, Hazel drove her Rolls-Royce to a quiet lot overlooking the bay. The sun had just risen, streaking the sky in gold and soft lavender. She sat in the driver's seat, hands resting on the wheel. She didn't cry. She didn't smile either. She just breathed. This car had once represented luxury, then survival, then power. But now, it represented boundaries. It was no longer about what she had, but what she wouldn't give away. Her trust, her identity, her worth. She stared out across the water and whispered to herself, "You're not their version of you anymore." The next week, Hazel began volunteering at a local women's center, teaching financial literacy classes. She stood in front of a group of young women, some with bruises still fresh, others just beginning to understand emotional theft, and told them her story. Not about the car, not about the house, but about the line she finally drew, and why it changed everything. Hazel never thought her greatest act of self-love would come disguised as a courtroom hearing. But as she sat one quiet evening in her condo, her name on the deed, her account secure, her future unscripted, she realized the most valuable thing she had ever earned wasn't her Rolls-Royce. It wasn't her job title, or the pristine apartment, or even the justice she'd fought for and won. It was her voice. For years, she had silenced it, in the name of keeping the peace, of honoring family, of not making things harder. And what had that silence bought her? A childhood where her achievements were invisible. A career her parents barely acknowledged unless it served their needs. And finally, betrayal so cold it wore the face of love. Now, she understood something she wished she'd learned much earlier. No one, not even those who share your blood, has the right to decide your worth. It was a hard lesson. It came wrapped in paper cuts and stitched wounds. It came with lawyers and lawsuits and nights when she cried not because she was weak, but because she had been strong for too long. But it came. And it came with truth. Hazel had once believed that family was defined by memories. The smell of Sunday pancakes. The laughter echoing down a shared hallway. The photograph albums gathering dust. She clung to those things like anchors, reasons to excuse the gaslighting, the dismissiveness, the quiet erasure of her value. But then she stood up. And when she did, she learned a more difficult, more liberating truth. Family is not who shares your past. It's who honors your boundaries. She remembered one night, the week after Tyler's arrest, when she walked the long pier near the waterfront. The air had been sharp with October cold. She wore a hoodie and kept her head down, trying to escape the noise in her head. She passed a group of teenage girls laughing, playfully shoving each other, sharing earbuds and bubble tea. One of them dropped her phone. Hazel picked it up and handed it back. The girl smiled and said, "Thanks, miss." Just that. A simple, polite moment. And Hazel almost cried right there. Because it had been so long since someone had spoken to her, not at her, not through her, not for her, but to her. With respect. With warmth. With humanity. It reminded her that kindness didn't have to come from your childhood living room. Sometimes, it came from strangers. Sometimes, from friends who stepped in when blood turned against you. And sometimes, you had to be the one to give it to yourself first. Hazel built a new rhythm after everything. She began hosting dinner nights at her place with Olivia and a handful of friends who knew her full story and didn't flinch. She started speaking at workshops about financial abuse, helping others recognize the red flags buried in emotional manipulation. One night, she was asked what freedom looked like to her now. She paused before answering. "It's not walking away with nothing," she said. "It's walking away with yourself intact." She didn't return to Oakwood Drive. Not even after the house was sold. Not even when neighbors sent thank you cards, telling her how proud they were of her for speaking up. She let that version of herself go. The girl who waited to be chosen. The daughter who gave everything and got conditions in return. The sister who stayed silent so others could shout. She loved that girl. She honored her. But she buried her. And in her place, Hazel planted something new. A woman who said no, without apology. A woman who set boundaries without guilt. A woman who saw her car, not as a prize, but as a monument to survival, a steel and leather line no one would ever cross again without her consent. Her niece, Sophia, sent her a letter the week she turned 12. It was handwritten, on lined paper with a sticker of a cat in sunglasses at the bottom. "Aunt Hazel," it read, "I don't know everything. But I know you're brave. My teacher said real heroes aren't in movies. They're the ones who protect people even when it's hard. I think you're like that. I hope when I grow up, I'm a little like you too." Hazel sat with that letter for an hour, tears staining the ink. She hadn't done it for thanks. But that didn't make it mean any less. Sophia didn't know the whole story, and Hazel would never poison her with bitterness. But she would make sure Sophia always had a chance to write her own. One evening, Hazel took the long route home from work. She turned onto the coastal highway, letting the wind slip in through a cracked window. The ocean roared beside her. The Rolls-Royce glided like a whisper over pavement. As the sky turned peach and violet, she pulled over and parked. Stepping out, she walked barefoot to the edge of the sand, letting the water kiss her toes. She looked back at the car. At herself. At the road behind her. And she whispered the words she wished someone had told her long ago. "You're not hard to love. You were just surrounded by people who didn't know how." Hazel's life didn't become perfect. She still had lonely days. She still grieved the idea of the family she never had. But now she lived truthfully. She had created a space for love that didn't come with strings. She had built a family of choice, where mutual respect wasn't optional, it was the foundation. And most of all, she had proven something to herself. That true success isn't what you have. It's what you'll fight to protect. Even if the battle starts at your front door. Pushpin Life Lesson Summary: 200 words. No one, not even those who raised you, has the right to define your worth, your future, or the value of what you've earned. Real love respects boundaries. True family supports your voice, not suppresses it. Hazel's journey wasn't just about reclaiming a car or a house. It was about reclaiming herself. She learned that success isn't measured in dollars or trophies, but in the courage to say no, to stand alone when no one stands with you, and to walk away from blood ties that bleed you dry. Sometimes, choosing yourself is the bravest act of all. Pushpin real-life application, 150 words. If you've ever felt pressured by family to give more than you can afford, financially, emotionally, or mentally, know this. It's not selfish to set boundaries. It's necessary. Just because someone shares your last name doesn't mean they own your life. Look at your credit. Question the favors they ask. Read every document before you sign. And most of all, trust your gut. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Your future isn't theirs to write. It's yours to protect. Build a circle of people who choose you for you, not what you give. The right ones will never ask you to shrink.